We're not employees of the city of Clemson. At this time, I'll introduce our commissioners. Commissioner Carranza, Commissioner Hyatt, Vice Chair Commissioner Rice, Commissioner Crowley, Commissioner Thaxton, Commissioner Buxton. I also want to introduce our administrative staff. Nathan Woods, Art Holbrook. Aaron is, well, he was here doing our AV and technical things. And Kelly Roach, we do appreciate working with y'all and what you do. If anybody needs assisted listening devices, we do have that available. Please let Kelly know and we'll get that for you. At this time, we're going to open our public session. As a reminder, according to the City of Clemson Planning Commission rules and procedure, members of the public may address the commission regarding matters within the purview of this commission and that are not on the agenda. The session can be up to 15 minutes total. Each speaker may speak for up to 3 minutes. Speakers may prepare copies of their remarks for attachment to the meeting minutes. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? Were there any public comments that were submitted by My Civic app or through email? Okay, at this time, we will close that session and we'll move to the adoption of minutes from our April 8th, 2024 regular meeting. Have all the commissioners had a time to look at the meeting minutes? Are there any revisions, edits, or omissions that you've noted?
I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from our April 8th, 2024 regular meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Raise your right hand. Any opposed? Okay. We were going to, at this tonight, from the staff, are there any updates or changes to anything that you've sent? Okay. The first action item on our agenda tonight is 2024 R01 map amendment proposed, Highway 76 and Lygon Street.
Hello everybody. I think I introduced this to you last time, but basically we're looking at doing a map amendment to section of, let's see what we got here. Section is currently zoned RM1 off of 76 and extends all the way to Ligon Street. The major reason for the proposed change to the ordinance is that there is 2 large non-conforming developments on the properties. One a townhouse development, the other one an apartment development. And basically the big fear is that if something was to happen to them, catastrophic loss, fire, whatnot, they would not be able to rebuild in their current format by right. So poses a potential issue for those property owners that we'd like to kind of head off before it happens. This would also include the adjacent vacant properties, connected right through and out to 76. We don't see really a reason why you'd have them separated as a separate zoning district. Even if they were developed, it would be appropriate for that area, is staff's recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, do you have any questions?
Not at this point. We need to see if we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item. If so, come forward to the podium, state your name and address for our record keeping, and please sign in with Kelly before you leave. Each member of the public has 3 minutes to comment on the proposal before us tonight.
We just acquired one of the properties there off of,
Please state your name and address and where you're from.
my name is Brandon Franklin Smith. My address is 835 East Cedar Rock Street, Pickens, South Carolina, 96671.
Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
We just acquired one of the properties there that is up for rezoning or being asked to be rezoned. The RM1 status is adequate for us. We do not have financial backing or the capability to step in and do a $12 to $18 million project, which is what has been projected to us to cost to develop that land. We're currently okay with the condos, the 4,000 square foot lots, comes out to 16. We know we got to put a pump station on that property because it is below grade. You know, I mean, these are things that are feasible for us. Myself and my 2 business partners, Sandra Duncan and Sue Tennis. If it gets anything above that, when you get to, I mean, it's a great idea, it really is. But if you get to something 29 units per acre, I mean, it becomes completely unfeasible for me, well, for all of us, as of today. Tomorrow something could change. We don't know, but as of today, we can't afford to come in and do a $12 to $18 million project on land that we own. So that's pretty much it.
Okay.
All right.
So you said you're good with RM1?
We are currently, at this point, we're good with it. RM1.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments?
Sorry.
Can I just make sure
Yes.
that we're clear? Now, the proposal would not restrict them from doing anything that they're proposing. It doesn't force them to do higher density.
Gotcha.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yes.
That's what I was gonna ask, so they could still do anything in the RM.
They can still do cottage style development exactly at what, all it does is expand what they are allowed to do. It does not restrict or require them to do anything of a higher density.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, we're good with it.
Thank you.
The main thing, if I'm correct, the way it's zoned now, if it burns down,
Yeah,
you're
but
in
they got a
trouble.
vacant lot next door. They just want to make sure they can still do what they were planning to do in RM1, which you will do.
So we won't be forced to put in 48.
No.
You-
You can always do less dense.
Great, that's very good.
Yeah, we're cool.
We're fine.
You left the paper, sir.
Okay, so can you just summarize what just happened? They have a vacant lot, so they were concerned that this was going to require them, okay.
Yeah, make sure, if I say anything wrong, just correct me. They just purchased a vacant lot that's zoned RM1. They have a plan to develop it under the RM1 zoning. It sounds like what we call patio homes, about 10 units per acre.
Okay,
And they just wanted to make sure that this was not going to prohibit them from doing that if it got rezoned.
okay.
And it will not. They can still absolutely do patio homes, detached single family at 10 units per acre.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm Justin Rizicka, live at 4 Black Powder Court, Piedmont, South Carolina. I'm a realtor representing a seller of 7 acres that would be part of this rezoning. And for that seller, it would highly benefit them because it would bring, the higher density would bring up the value of the property, right? Because a developer could come in and cost per unit would be a lot less. And so we're in favor of it, and we appreciate your time and effort in this.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the public? Okay, at this time, I'll move. Any of the commissioners have comments?
I guess I'll lead it off. But I appreciate the report and kind of encouraging us also to ride out there. I rode out there twice. And actually this, kind of that bigger apartment, area as well. I mean, to me, it certainly looks like apartments from the outside. It may be something else on the inside or how it's zoned or how it's built, but certainly it appears that it's full as well. So I would hate that if there was some catastrophic event that they weren't able to build back because of restrictions we have in place. So I'm in favor of us moving forward with that after looking at it in person. Anybody else? I would second what Greg says. Each of those are individually owned units. If I have one of those units, I'd cry if something happened out there, and we need to do what's best for the people. And so I've been out there several times, and I'm glad you encouraged us to do that. Thank you. So at this time, do we have a motion? I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission approves the 2024 R-01 proposed map amendment for Highway 76 and Ligon Street.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So there's a second from Commissioner Thatcher. All in favor, raise your right hand. Seeing everybody in favor, the motion passes. So our next item is advisory items. Are there any advisory items?
Okay. The next one was not brought forward by staff, but actually brought by a council member. But since it's zoning regulations, I was asked to present. So I think you've been presented with the proposal, which is there's two parts to it. First part is to increase the size of minimum size of a PD if it's surrounded by, minimum size to 4 acres from 2 acres. And if it's surrounded completely by residential, to increase it from 4 acres to 5 acres. I don't know if you want to handle just one at a time or go through both of them, both proposals right at once.
What do y'all prefer?
The next one is involving setbacks, not actually relevant to PDs, but.
Okay.
Oh, the next one, okay. Next one is in the all commercial districts. Currently, we have a 0 setback requirement on the sides, so commercial businesses can be right next to each other. This would increase that to a 15-foot side setback, so that businesses would have to be at a minimum of 30 feet away from each other.
Okay. Well, let's take these one at a time.
Okay.
And go with the first one, and this is item for discussion. Can you tell us how it is currently, please?
Currently, the zoning allows for PDs to be a minimum of 2 acres. So it does make reference that there was a time where it was larger. We have no records of PDs ever having to be larger than 2 acres of a minimum lot size, other than when they're surrounded by residential. There has been discussion in the past about decreasing the size for PDs, but we did not find a record of them being larger than 2 acres at any time.
Okay.
Except for if it's surrounded completely by residential.
And that would be 4 acres, is that correct?
4 acres if it's surrounded by RM1 and, R20 and R12.
So did we make changes a couple of years ago?
No,
Couldn't find that.
that did not happen.
They didn't, that didn't even do the short-term change, because it was proposed to go down to,
There's a proposed to go down to 1 acre at one point. That did not go through. But we found no records of any proposal to actually go or any time where it has actually been larger. We think that they basically set it at 2 acres because that's minimum size usually for our zoning districts. In the ordinance, other parts of the ordinance, that's the minimum size for a zoning district as well.
but we could not find a record of it being larger.
And the current commissioners, what is your comments on this for planned development? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think you kind of got to look at it two ways. I understand the idea of making the minimum requirement larger, that maybe there's not as much available that could become a PD. You know, you'd have to get more people willing to kind of get stuff together, but at the same time, I kind of think the idea of a PD, or at least that zoning district or tool or whatever you want to use it, is one for larger developments like Patrick Square and things like that, but also for smaller ones where you can get some benefits. Like we had the situation downtown where the PD allowed it to dig the garage down and things like that. They wouldn't have been able to do that without getting the rest of the block basically to do it if these new requirements were in.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. You're gonna create less opportunities for PDs. With really, like this property, it was 3 acres, going to be great if it was a PD, but now we can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, and it could just go straight zoning and really not be, and it really needed to be planned development.
Because in that situation, it was 2 stories on the backside close to the neighborhoods, which was good for the neighborhoods as
Right.
a PD.
Being able to bury that garage kept the headlights out of the neighborhood and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's one of those things where the idea that, if you can, I know there's some stuff in town with some people that think PDs are taking over and they're doing this, and just because somebody applies for a PD on a 2-acre lot doesn't mean that council has to approve it or that we have to approve it or anything, but taking away the opportunity to present an idea, I think, limits your ability to wisely use land, especially with the varying terrain and situations that we have in town.
Yeah, but I think the plan of a PD is to have control. And you lessen the size, now you have less control. Now you just go straight zoning.
Right.
And properties that are zoned are going to be developed at some point, whether someone, you know, you've given up some control.
Yeah, I think that the concern might rise from that, you know, OFPs are more available, then that's just, people are simply using it to increase density where there's a different zoning or whatever, so they're stuffing more people. But that doesn't, like I said, it doesn't mean that it has to be approved. If it feels like that the plan is inappropriate for the area, then you just deny it. But at the same time, it could be a situation like that where you can get something really beneficial, like the city wound up with some affordable housing units or workforce housing units, buried the parking and things like that on a smaller lot.
Any other comment? Go ahead.
So when we had the 2-acre PD, we were able to accommodate the neighborhood with the 2-acre PD. I mean, I understand this because the larger the PD, probably the more buffer that they're thinking is available, but with the 2 acres, we were able to still accommodate the neighborhood in a sense with the 2-story buildings. Yeah. We protected that neighborhood.
Because I think if they would have went straight zoning, if I'm not mistaken, they would have backed right up to that road. 3 stories.
Yeah, I think they would have wound up being the same height off the back, if you measured off the back, because they would have just done surface parking and things and gone, because they would have built on top of the hill instead of grading it down. So it would have been the same height, but allowing them to do it allowed them to dig down and not lose that height.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things too, and I think you kind of mentioned it too, first thing popped in my mind, John, was about, you know, we had discussed in previous meetings, you know, a year or so, 2 years back, about the possibility of these pocket neighborhoods, to where you get some affordable housing, you get some workforce housing, and I think if you make it 4 acres, you will completely lose that opportunity to have something, especially with the cost of land in some of the areas as well. As you know, if you go from someone purchasing 2 acres, now they're having to purchase 4, it completely takes away that opportunity to build something creative, which I think it does say that, you know, one of the things with the PD is encourages creativity from the developer to be able to come up with some things that not only benefit the developer, but also benefits the city as well.
Any other comments? The comments that I would have on that is I would agree with the commissioners here. My big concern is it would eliminate any workforce housing because there are bigger and bigger developers nationally that are coming in that can't afford to buy up neighborhoods. Maybe not like a local developer that we've had here tonight. And that would be disastrous to do that. Because, you know, there comes a point where people will sell. They say they won't, but I promise you, they will. And it would be not in the best interest of the city. Now, let me say with the plan development, what I've learned in investigating a lot of this is setbacks, anything is on the table. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Anything is on the table. It does not apply to any zoning code that is here. So if we wanted 15-foot alleyways or 30 feet, we could have requested, or city council could have requested, is that correct? That those setbacks happen. I think the reason I bring that up is when we were looking at the one over at the old Bilo Center, my biggest concern was they had pushed the setbacks further back in that neighborhood back there. If I lived there, I don't know what I'd have done. So a planned development has its own set of rules and it's an open sketchboard. Is that a good way to say it?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people try to, like, I don't know, use base zoning as a reference point, but it is not actually relevant. Ultimately, the city council has total control over the setbacks they set, the height they set, lot coverage, buffers, anything, even use, whatever they want. Ultimately, city council is to legislative action from them, so they are total control.
So in like my neighborhood, there's 1 acre lots in my neighborhood, R20. You can have 2 1 acre lots and create a PD?
No, currently, because you are surrounded totally by R20 and R12, you would have to have 4 acres. So you'd have to get 4 of those 1 acre lots to create a PD in a completely R20 or R12 neighborhood. But if you were bordered up on one side, if you were, say, on the outside of your neighborhood, and it was, you know, had some commercial and then a couple, like another acre of a residential, you could theoretically have, you know, an acre in the commercial and then an acre in the residential, like on the edge of your neighborhood, and it'd be 2 acres, yes. I can't remember exactly where your neighborhood is, so I don't know if there's.
Yeah, behind First Citizens.
Oh, yeah, so say someone bought a First Citizens and had like that, and the one next to it had, you know, an acre of commercial and then, you know, residential, but it'd be up at the edge of it. Yeah.
But the idea of a planned development is to turn it down. I mean, somebody else is gonna come in Camelot and put up, you know, buy enough houses to, you turn it down.
Right, I think that's what scares people is that we've got so many in town and they've kind of been used here and there in a way to just increase density that it has given some people a bad taste. Whereas if you actually look and read like the way the state defines them and what they're supposed to be for and intended for, that it gives you it's supposed to make what's going on the property better and not worse. And if that is always considered, then I don't think increasing opportunities to use that tool is a bad thing. I think what happens is sometimes people come in and they say, oh, well, I'm zoned CP, I can only do 3 stories, let me just apply for a PD and I'll apply for 6 stories, just to build the same building but put 2 more stories on it. And if that gets through, then that's really not the intention anyway. If you were gonna take that same number of people, like at the Bilo, where they were gonna have a set number of density and everybody kind of, you know, that wasn't really a good layout or plan that everybody was looking at. But if you took that density and did a 4-story building on one side and had then a big park on the other or something so that the developer doesn't lose their base density, but then can do something creative with the property that, you know, not the little dog park that's off with no spot, but they do a real 1.5, 2 acre park and then condense the housing into a smaller part of it so that you wind up with a better use of land versus just having to sprawl it out. I think it's beneficial to have that option.
I think the other thing that, when you're saying that, that everything would look like the hub have to be that big, close to that big.
Right,
With that
because if
kind
it
of-
was 5 acres, it would
Right.
have to be
It
like
would,
that.
it would be, and no telling. I think we all here have had the training from the Municipal Association. We've had the training here. We have the experts right here. In fact, I actually believe that I think there are a lot of dangers to doing this in Clemson, like I said, with people.
Because you could create
Buying
more
up.
density with the 5 acre. I mean, it could get a little more.
Well, I think there would not be any affordable housing. That's my opinion. How would, Nathan, from your perspective, how would that appear? Is that wrong in me assuming that?
No, I can pick up your train of thought there. Like if it would, increasing the size would, could potentially cause developers to have to gobble up more parcels to get to that 4 acres. I see what you're saying.
I think his train of thought is
Smaller developers.
Is like the only way to get affordable housing is to go through developers. And people aren't just going to build out of the kindness of their heart. They're not just going to build affordable housing, right? So if you limit planned developments, you limit opportunities to get to say, hey, we'll let you build this, we'll let you build this number of stories, but we want this many affordable housing units. You kind of limit that if you limit the the size of.
Also, you're also limiting the number of developers who can potentially take part of that property. Like, just like the people who are here and are saying, oh, I just want to do a small little cottage development. You know, if this was required that they do a certain, like we require them to do the 29 units, which is kind of, this is requiring you to go bigger, they wouldn't be involved, but at least you have the potential of a small local developer who might be able to buy up and put a PD together and out of their goodness of their heart do a, resume.
Yeah, I think leaving it small might also put, it just popped in my head, but some opportunities. Everybody looks at them as kind of one site deal. But if you had somebody come in and they said, I can get these 3 acres over here, and then I can grab 2 more over here, here's what I'll do, is I'll write these 2 proposals, and if you guys will do me this PD over here, I can do this other one over here, and this one can be affordable workforce, and I can stuff in over there where you would never even have that opportunity if you had to go 4 and 4 or 4 and 5 or whatever. There's, and I know that's not really a highly likely scenario, but I think that's what these extra tools are for, is for the less common scenarios.
That's actually interesting. We, last time I worked for, we did do transfer of development rights. It's exactly how we did affordable housing, is we let you do denser in our, we'll say, urban section of town, and if you created affordable units in the rural, less expensive part of town. So, I mean, the PD is the same. You could theoretically use a PD in the same avenue. I hadn't really thought about doing that here, but it is possible.
And that might be, like, I don't know how it would fly, but because I noticed that with the R20 and R12, and I know that's stuff we want to protect, but if we put in a clause to where we did the kind of what we're talking about here, where it's not just, okay, you can do it individually, but if you're doing an affordable or workforce connected to another one, that maybe we wouldn't have to do 4 acres, because we know that it's going to be not really commercial residential. It's going to be residential for either affordable or workforce in a neighborhood. So doing an increase, not going from an R20 to, RM4 or something development, but if you wanted to give them, 7,000 or 8,000 square foot lots on a couple of acres that might be touching R20 and R12 in exchange for something down there, if there was a way to write that in, maybe that could incentivize stuff like, but not have it just on its own, like, sure, here, we're gonna, now people are gonna scoot in and start taking, buying 3 or 4 R20 houses and putting in 10 or 15 and trying to sell them, but it's gotta be connected to an affordable program.
But you're saying putting that into the planned development, not something separate.
Well, it would have to be two separate because it would be two different parcels. So
Right.
it would be like a joint agreement where you're doing one plan development over here and one over here, but they're contingent upon each other. In other words, this one only gets approved if this one gets approved, and this one only gets built if that one gets built.
You might actually be able to do it as the same PD. You have to have, a minimum of 2 contiguous acres, but I haven't seen anything in the state or town law that says that the PD cannot be in 2 areas. So you could have it.
So we can write it up as one then, okay.
It's just that, there has to be a 2 contiguous acre portion of it.
I think the key of what I hear you saying, and I want to make sure I'm correct, is that leaving it allows more creativity and flexibility.
Yes.
Yeah, if anything, we should shrink it.
Right. I understand. Does everybody understand what he's saying?
I do have
Yes.
a question. How does this stack up against other areas in the state as far as the acreage and stuff?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I would have to do some research. I know that Greenville has some that are less than, definitely less than 4 acres. I would have to do specific research to find out what
I
it'd be.
found something from the Low Country, but it was probably more than 10 years old, so I don't know if it was even
We can
worth it.
research that. A lot of people right now are, because of the money that, the same thing you guys are experiencing, because of the money that's influenced everything in the state, development-wise, a lot of people are making these same decisions to tweak things in their zoning code as far as PDs and their zones. So that's very interesting. I'm sure we could find a really recent example. Greenville actually, I don't know where they are today, but the last time probably like a month ago when we were looking, they actually strip PDs from their zoning code. You just, like if you want density or height, you pay per square foot.
Yeah, they also
It is a
switched,
big number.
and they switched to a form-based zoning.
Yeah,
So you're allowed to do residential, commercial, whatever you want, as long as it looks a certain way. So you can do density, you can do all these different things. And so like, you could theoretically, even in what we consider commercial areas, you could do a fully residential project. It just has to look like a commercial building. Or you could do, in a residential district, you could do a office and do a commercial project, but it looks like a residential building.
And that is what, when you go downtown Charleston, and I know we're not Charleston, but there can be a parking garage and it looks like a brick building that's run down, that's like aged well, but it's not. It's like they just built it. It's a parking garage. And it's beautiful, and you would not know it's a parking garage.
They always say a degree in planning is a degree in plagiarism. The best planners are people who steal what's working in other towns. So if you see something you like, that is exactly what, tell us, we go research how it was done from a legislative point of view, and we copy it.
Every time we go, our daughters want to take pictures in front of this parking garage that has pictures and, it
I
has
know what you're talking about.
flowers and shutters. It's beautiful. And sometimes and I know I'm not Board of Architectural Review, but it's like, how do we get the pretty buildings? If we've got to have the density, how do we get the pretty buildings?
You can do it. It's absolutely doable. Honestly, when that self-storage facility was proposed to be on 93, when they said, well, what do you want it to look like? I said, the roller mill in Central?
Yes.
Can you make it look like that? They said, yeah, we can do that. But that fell through for other reasons of, what the land could be, utilized on for, because the easements went through.
And if you've ever seen theirs all over the southeast, you don't ever seen 2 that look alike. They're crazy. So, any other thoughts?
I do want to just make sure that we're talking about these planned developments are the mixed use required. Like
Correct.
that's not optional, that it has to be mixed use. Are these contributing to a lot of vacant retail space in the city?
We do not have a lot of vacant retail space in the city. That is a false thing, but the most prevalent one.
We'll provide you data with that. I actually know, let me chime in real quick because I know the numbers off the top of my head as of October, so I'm out of date. Out of 480, is that right, Art? Come on, Art.
Roughly 480.
Okay, he's good.
Updated for
480 commercial properties in the city, 35 were vacant. That includes things like the bingo hall next to Ingles. And this is, also let me say, these are drive-by, intern, Nathan, Art, Jacob stuff. But we're pretty close. 35, which puts you at roughly 7% vacancy rate in the city. If you further extrapolate that out to the ones that we always hear about, which are student housing developments, and I think the reason that we hear about those are certainly because of the Bixby and Grand Mart, which have the whole front vacant. But if you remove everything that's not student housing, it puts the vacancy rate in the city around 3.5%. And I'm the first to tell you I don't know but I did used to do economic development, and if I had had a vacancy rate of 7% in the city I was at previously, I would have been elected president. So, I mean, I do think that our issue is a perception issue because the ones that are vacant are so visible where they're at. They're the prime spaces and they're vacant. What's driving that though is not, I'm on a soapbox here, so I'll keep going. Clemson punches above its weight because of the university in terms of retail attraction. We would not have a Publix here as a 17,000 population town. We wouldn't have a Publix. We wouldn't have a lot of, Herbs probably can tell you, we wouldn't have half the restaurants that we do because of the student population that's here to influence that. And from the other demographic that swings us up there is the full-time population, the wealth skews very high. So we attract a lot that we normally wouldn't. What's driving a lot of those vacancies are what's on top of them. So they don't have to fill that and they can still pay their mortgage payment and their rent. Now, what we saw with 408 and 412 College Avenue and what we certainly saw with the hub is those 408 and 412 on their own, they put it in their PD document. We really pushed that at the hub, and then they ran with it too. Is they're basically penalizing themselves for having vacant storefronts. They don't want that because it decreases the vibrancy of the building. So I don't remember the number, but after a certain number of months at 408 and 412, if that's not filled, they start paying the city a month. It's very nominal, but they start paying the city back essentially a penalty per month that's not filled. And same with the hub. I don't know that theirs exactly does that, but they have a bunch of incentives to attract developers. And so again, what Jacob said about plagiarism, we want to rip that out of that PD and push that for everyone that's mixed use going forward to prevent some of that and I don't want to say it's misconception because it is your perception is your reality. So when you drive by a vacant building every day, it's vacant. I'm just saying in terms of the whole, I'll find out for the next meeting like what Greenville and Anderson's vacancy rate is, and I would venture to guess that ours is much lower.
Yeah, ours is always
we're also smaller, so I get that.
And when the developments were built, they were not filled. The commercial space was not filled. So initially, you had this building that you thought the residents were going to enjoy, permanent residence, and so that wasn't happening. And everyone is still feeling that, even though there's a little shift. They're still feeling what was going on in 2014.
Yeah,
there's a couple things at play there too. Like maybe what it's filled with isn't what full-time residents want it to be filled with. I'm very empathetic to that. I get that. And then also like you guys and city council and staff, we can influence a lot of things. What we can't influence necessarily are commercial rent prices on the bottom. Now, we've done that sort of backdoor at the hub with what their incentives are offering, but we're never gonna be at a place where we can say, hey, this is $1,000 a month. It's just, that's not.
Yeah, I mean, Youth Center was a big black eye on our town for a long time because it was vacant right downtown. That was mostly that was not a PD, so I'll take it out.
Straight
zoning. Straight zoning. But the owner of the property had a very specific who they wanted in there. And we had tons of people come in, look and move in there, but they wouldn't play ball.
What is that?
That is
Youth Center.
The youth center is the first, okay, let's see, what's the best way to describe it?
Directly
Left
across from First Baptist.
Yeah, across from First Baptist, when you come to the center left. They're now, the university's moved into it now. So it's no longer vacant.
Earl Street stuff, was
Earl
it?
stuff's
That's pretty full.
pretty much full. I think there's one space
One
there.
space in there, yeah.
I think that goes back to, I think there's actually,
Opens and closes.
I think there's
There's
5
some
spaces.
turnover there, yeah.
Yeah, they definitely did. I think there's 5 spaces in the building there though, so one's, I mean, I know my perception is different. It's not that bad. And then some of those folks, like, I think Doug will tell you that, your pie kills it right there half the year, and then the other half of the year it kills it at Dockside. So, I mean, he might slap me for saying that, but I mean, they do well. So there is a place, especially like when you get that sort of density that's right there for it. And like even Roar, which is coming and they're adding stuff to it, like that's a totally captive audience of, might not be the audience that we all want to hang out with all the time, but that's a captive audience of people that visit those restaurants or shops or whatever and spend money.
I think that was really helpful because, yes, perception, but also I didn't know if these were contributing to, oh, well, we now have to do this commercial space and.
We do, and one of the things Jacob and I talk about a lot is we have, our zoning code allows for mixed use. We don't have a mix of, on the same piece of property, you don't really have a mix of uses.
Yeah.
And Jacob can probably explain that better than I can, but.
Right now, if you're going to do a straight zoning, you can do a mixed-use building, but you can't do a mixed-use development. So like, say bylaws, for instance. By right, couldn't you picture, commercial development, everything along 93, and then maybe a row of townhouses along that neighborhood in the back? You can't do that. Not allowed under straight zoning. You can do it with a PD, but you could not do that under straight zoning. It'd be nice to have a mixed-use zone. Like that, you could actually have a mixture of uses rather than a mixed-use building. Right now, we only allow for a single building that is mixed use. You can't do, say, have residential uses on property and then a separate building, commercial. But.
So currently, let me make sure and just say this. Currently, we are doing the Clemson Comprehensive Plan.
Yes.
Is what we're doing now. And people that are watching or people that are here, we would love to have your input. There are 2 ways on the City of Clemson website. You click the banner, you can actually go to a map and play with that and give input. And then there's a survey. My concern is the survey is closing soon, so we need everybody's input to put those things. I think the other thing that we've learned, and correct me if I'm mistaken, and I'd like for y'all to give some information, it's time for us, and it would benefit y'all with all the changes. I think there's some money asked for in the budget to look at our overall zoning. Is that correct?
It's in the budget is not passed yet, but yes.
Right, but it's a request.
It's a request, yes, from our department, and I had talked to Andy about it, yes, for sure. And actually, I think I talked to you about it, I talked to Elaine about it before you, about how do we look at this thing comprehensively.
And for me, a lot of people, I don't know if y'all know this, there's actually where one of my restaurants is, I'm in an overlay zone. And so there are other ways to control different areas when you put that in. The problem becomes in the overlay zone, and I can only speak in my experience, I'll be general, is what was seen as a walking district, you're not gonna see me walking down the sidewalks. And so there are other different avenues, and I don't think as quick as we're growing, I believe it should be a recommendation from us that we do move forward with staff being able to hire our consultants. I can't pronounce their names.
Housel Levine?
Yeah, Housel Levine, because they do that kind of thing. I think they're looking at a unified district ordinance for Anderson.
Yeah, it would have to go through our RFQ purchasing requirements, I think. But yes, they are doing the, so the trend right now in planning, again, another soapbox real quick, is to combine your AR districts with your zoning code, so they just mesh together. It's called Unified Development Ordinance instead of Zoning Ordinance. that's nerd planner speak, but that's what Greenville just passed, and that's what Anderson's on their way to doing. It just combines two documents at the end of the day, but puts a lot in there. But yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Right. And so, you know, we're looking at land use, we're looking at nature, we're looking at everything else through the comprehensive plan. It only makes sense to me. How do we do something or give them the tools as quick as a requester coming in without looking at everything and getting all the data? Being proactive versus reactive.
Well, I mean, not to get into a different topic, but I agree, you need to have the tools you need, but under a different zoning or ordinance, are we still protecting neighborhoods? Okay, because that is just a thing, I mean.
So, and I can only speak for myself, but I think I speak for a lot of you guys in council that I've talked to about this topic. Like, because there are so few true traditional neighborhoods in our city limits, I think it's paramount that we always protect those, and that, so like that, what you're talking about begins that's the center of the thought process.
Of the conversation.
And everything else radiates out from that. But there are places, I think, I won't tell you yet because I want to let the comprehensive plan play it out. There are places in town right now, like major, what I'll call thoroughfares, or secondary thoroughfares, where you could not build a townhome right now. But you can build, going back to the affordable conversation, you can absolutely build $2 million homes, but you couldn't build 6 townhomes there. And potentially there's new places that's appropriate. So I think what you do is you go through the comprehensive plan. Out of that is gonna come a land use map, a future land use map, which should look different than the one that we have today looks. And then you can start looking at, does zoning in some of those areas need to change based on that future land use map? Because that is, I was having a conversation with a council member the other day, like that map's supposed to be aspirational of what we want the city to look like or how we expect it to grow. Because it is going to grow.
And would you agree that that's for the future, meaning now and beyond, 20 years from now?
Yeah.
Looking ahead.
Yes, I do, yeah. I mean, everything, probably the onus is on Jacob more than the rest of us, but I mean, every decision Jacob makes has long, you build a house, unless something bad happens, it's not coming down for 100 years. So like those decisions carry a lot of weight, and that's why I go back to protecting the neighborhoods. Like, yeah, because everything we do in those traditional neighborhoods preserves them. I mean, you don't want to necessarily change anything because you want to preserve them for as long as possible.
To bring it back to the PD discussion.
Sorry.
One thing that Commissioner Thaxton. Now, although mixed use is always required in PD, it does not actually have to be commercial. So, for example, we just did one Clemson out there on Lawrence Road. Wasn't an appropriate place to do a large commercial development, just not. But we liked the product they were doing. It got through Planning Commission and City Council. Now, what they did do was donate a bunch of land for a park. And they did do a small commercial component of kind of like probably going to be a convenience store. But if that doesn't succeed in 5 years, because it's kind of questionable whether or not it'll really take off, maybe it will, that whole land reverts to a park too. So that it has to be mixed use, but doesn't necessarily have to be commercial. In appropriate conditions, like a residential area like that, it was thought to be parks were a more appropriate use for the mixture of uses than making someone build a Walgreens out there.
So I think the last part, is there any other discussion on that part of the proposal? Anybody need any other clarity or information we need staff to get for us?
All I heard is that do some research into other communities about their PD sizes.
Okay.
For reference.
Yeah, we'll get that quick.
And then I think the next part is going into side setbacks for non-residential districts, C, CM, CP1, CP2, CP3, and OP wanting a minimum of 15-foot setback in each of those areas. And basically, to me, let me ask you a question about that. It'd be 15 foot on this side and 15 foot on this side, so you'd have a 30-foot alleyway.
Correct. I mean, people aren't going to just give up the land and valuable commercial. It'll probably end up being parking lots.
So any thoughts or questions about that?
I would also like to
Currently, it's 0.
0. Yeah, so I'd just like to point out one thing, that as our current, if this was to pass in its current form and something happened to a big fire downtown, it would not be rebuilt in its current format. Everything would change.
So it would be like Patrick Square, you would have Rick Erlin's, then you would have 30 feet, then you would have the hotel, then you would have 30 feet, and you couldn't put Sunnyside Cafe back.
Well, that's a planned development.
Yeah, that's a planned development, but I'm more thinking about triple T's,
Okay.
you know, that section through there.
It's also not necessarily in between businesses, it's in between parcels. So if you had one of the lots had one building with 3 business
you're right. You
storefront,
could have
then
multiple
between the parcels has to be.
That is correct. So if you amassed the whole downtown, it wouldn't matter anyways. You just had probably end
Yeah,
up
it'd be one
buying
lot,
more.
so setbacks would be
Yeah,
on the
so
edges.
you're right. You are correct that you could still do the same thing. You just have to buy up more of it.
Yeah, but like the Shepherd is on one lot, and then what's next? So you would have to have the setback between the Shepherd and what's next to it, because those are different lots. But I'm trying to think of.
Well, downtown right now, they're all different lots.
They're all different, okay.
But you're absolutely correct that if you amassed and bought up the land, you wouldn't have to have a separation.
So that would then encourage larger, bulkier developments, because you would have to not lose your 30 feet, 30 feet, 30 feet, 30 feet, you would want to buy a larger, and then you're only losing your 15 feet on the edge of an acre instead of the edge of a quarter acre. Because is there a sliding scale for size? Like if
There is no side, no.
So if you've got Tiger Town's its own lot,
Yeah.
and you lose 15 feet on either side of that, what does that leave you, 20 feet to build?
Maybe. I mean, Tiger Town's probably 40, 50 feet wide, maybe?
Yeah, so so you're losing 30, you can put a 10-foot building on that lot? I mean, that's stuff like that's.
You'd end up selling it out and buy up.
Yeah, you'd have to buy 2 or 3 more down.
Yeah.
Commissioner Burton?
Yes, I was wondering, this might be off the wall, but could we have something where the setback must be a total of so many feet on either both sides or one side?
Yeah, in the AR district, we do require that if a building amassed, so even if they're connected in multiple lots or whatever, if it gets up to 250 feet, there has to be a 16-foot gap between the next building. So even if it's not yours or whatever, there has to be a 16-foot gap. So you could do something similar to that. We already have that in place though, but we could monkey around with that. But yes, that is a possibility as well.
So if we have the 15-foot setback, could we just say it on one side or the other, or 50-50?
Yeah.
How do you determine who gives up their land?
It would be who's coming, who gets there first.
Who gets there first?
So my question is this: is there anywhere, point of information from any of you 3, is there anywhere that has anything like this?
The best area that you would all be familiar with that would be, I don't know if it's in their zoning or just how it did develop, the most similar to this would be Travelers Rest. If you can think about how the spacing is in Travelers Rest, that would be the closest that you could envision it. So it's not really a walkable, again, it was not really a walkable town. Luckily, they have the bike path, otherwise before that it was kind of,
Right.
if you can think of how they're kind of separated, that's kind of a similar way of the spacing. But I don't know if that would happen here because people would probably end up, well, who knows how it would happen, but.
7.5 square miles versus Travelers Rest, which is.
Yeah, that developed before it became anything, if you can, but they all.
When I think of like 30 feet though, I I'm thinking there could be like a little brick walkway between buildings and you can have outside dining for the restaurants. And so, I mean, it doesn't sound terrible to me because I don't know what that space needs to be, but having a little bit of a setback creates, I mean, there's a lot of action outside the coffee shop, Summer Moon. There's action outside Handles. There's stuff going on outside. It's like, oh, I want to go check that out because there's space outside. But when,
But they're all connected, all those ones you cited.
well, they have the front.
The front,
There are zero lot line.
This isn't the front. This is the in between it, like an alleyway going back. I'm trying to picture somewhere that would have that.
But if you did 15 on the front at those places, they may not want to spend the money to pour a pad or do that in the front, so you just have dirt or grass for 15 feet
Yeah, they
and then a
would.
sidewalk.
But you actually couldn't use it because that space is a setback and cannot be used for commercial.
No,
So-
No, it's not a buffer, it's a setback.
No. You can absolutely do seating in the
You
front.
can?
Because like, you'll see like all in front of the Bixby's. Bixby's is straight zoning. If you think about how big that's like under our, we've already addressed a lot of like what you're talking about. So there's all sorts of seating in front of Bixby's and everything like that. That was all done straight zoning. We did increase, those have a pretty big setback. So you have like a 8-foot sidewalk and then a 12-foot setback that's their sidewalk. So you get about 20 feet of plaza area in front of that building.
That's
Under current
wait a
zoning.
minute, yeah, because that's the first building that was built under the new rules. That's it. You don't think of downtown Clemson and say, oh, this is what our rules do.
Yeah.
Think of the Bixby.
Bixby's is the only example I can give you of what under our modern zoning is what's been built.
And 408, 412 largely.
404, yes, 408, 412 is basically,
So, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
street zoning in a lot of ways. At least the front will be. And that has big plazas outside and everything.
Is there, the only other thing I was gonna ask is, this was after I took some training a couple of years ago, and I can't remember what it was specifically referred to, but they were talking about alleyways and side setbacks and stuff, and it was probably referring to bigger cities, but there was input from a police officer that was saying that having all of those alleyways and side setbacks creates, not a burden, but an opportunity for a burden on them, because everywhere you've got a break in a building, you've got somewhere off the main alley, off the main drag where people are, whatever, where, trash and stuff could build up, or somebody can get pulled back, and I know the idea that we're talking about is there's dining and seating and this like that, but maybe it is just the setback where the garbage cans are on the side, because we're building further back now because we have to have this empty space on the side. So I don't know if it'd be worth getting input from, Chief Campos on what he thought about creating all those additional spaces and things.
I mean, yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, we try to create blocking. Like I said, we don't allow you to go more than 250 feet before you create a block, basically a way to get back. But I can see what you're talking about. A bunch of our little alleyways downtown, where we do have those little alleys, are problematic.
Right, that's what, you have the potential to create just a problem everywhere, or this alley's real popular with the seating and stuff, but so the other side of the building gets ignored, and that's where scooters get dumped over, or,
Right now,
whatever.
we just forced one of the ones downtown where that building, we're next to Loose Change. We just made him put in a gate because we were having so much issues in that alleyway. So to keep people out of there. So we would probably end up doing the same thing here. If we had a bunch of alleys between every property, we'd probably end up with gates across them.
I could see parking enforcement being a challenge.
Yeah.
If you can put a car there.
It is a challenge.
Well, I think that's exactly right. I don't think, this one, I don't really care if we do it on 123 or whatever, but on downtown is.
I believe I've seen a situation like this in downtown easily. We'll have several stores connected, and then there'll be a public walkway in between. There'll be chairs and seats, and it connects the front of the buildings with another street in the back or public parking.
That's absolutely true.
He just said what's already in place.
We already have that in place.
It's already in place.
Every 250 feet.
So to me, the setback it just, I mean, commercial and residential is totally different. It restricts commercial use too much. There's already things in place to protect that.
So what I hear you saying is every 250 feet,
You have to create the alleyway where we're
what
talking
you're
about.
talking about currently.
Yes, that is under,
So
that's currently.
this,
And, shopping and eating, some people want things tight.
Yeah.
There's one building there that, it's fairly long, but right about in the middle, they have a portico going to the other side, and there's stores within the portico.
Yeah, there's a couple next to the Blue Voodoo in downtown Easley, and then right in between Karma, right in downtown Easley, both have that to split up. But again, it's basically the same kind of things. I think it's around 200, 300 feet of building and then a cut through.
Commissioner Thaxton?
So the proposed change for this part of it, is this at the recommendation of
Council,
staff?
not staff.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
It wasn't a recommendation of all of council, it was a recommendation that it came back here for us to look at from one council person.
I just didn't know the proposed change wording,
Well,
where that came from.
That was, any council member on any topic anywhere can present something. And that's how this came to us to be presented.
That is accurate.
I didn't know if the 15-foot was just arbitrary or if it was very specific, the 15-foot.
Oh, where that number came from?
Yeah.
Okay, so not necessarily who asked, but where the
Yeah,
15
just-
feet came from, if that was just somebody.
I do not know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, this is it says the following recommendation was submitted by Ms. Watt, and so that section, is she not the one that created the
Yes,
proposed
Councilman
change?
Watt created that, and the little blurbs about
Okay.
the justifications were there.
Just so we're clear, so just for example, if Tiger Town burnt down, they could not rebuild,
Correct.
which is what we've just, Bobby rezoned this other one to eliminate that, but now you have something that's more, major,
Yes.
and now you end up with a 10-foot wide building where Tiger Town used to be. With, frying chicken wings and stuff, it probably could burn down.
Oh, but I would just love a little alleyway with like lights and a brick path and patio tables.
Well, every
Sounds
250
really
feet you'll have that.
But here's the issue.
If you
Here's
read-
the issue. As
it
a
does
business
say-
owner, I'm not gonna build that for you if I have to give up that land. Why would I go spend that money?
So I can eat outside your restaurant, so I can.
Well, that's not part of my plan. If I'm paying for land, if that is part of my plan, I would ask for an exception, which people have had to come back and ask for exceptions, like, what's the Charleston Pub? They had to ask for an exception. Whatever the taco shop that DeAndre,
Before my time, maybe.
No,
My
that's
excuse.
Roar.
Yeah, that was my time. Yeah, they did, yeah.
yeah, so you would have to come back to ask for those things. But I'm talking about a small business owner who is creating that. A lot of times, it's just like the small developer that came in here. Is a matter of what can you do and
We're also talking
how are you
about
gonna make your
small
money?
portions.
Right, like,
Small parcels.
if
We're
you
not
bought a
talking-
quarter
we're talking
acre
about
of land.
Small parcels.
Well, even
You're already restricted.
Now, it does say though, exceptions can be made for downtown. That's the last sentence here.
Right, but even if you're buying on 93, if I can get my hands on a quarter acre or something that's 40 feet across the front, and I've got to give up 30 feet for setbacks, I can build a 10-foot building, you're never going to have a business go in there. You're going to then relegate to a minimum lot width before anybody will even consider developing.
And what can I make here, an ice machine, that's how I can make money.
Right, you'll have a penguin ice will be stuck in there because it'll be a 10-foot pad with 15-foot setbacks on either side.
Even the neighbor to the 412 College, the pharmacist, he couldn't rebuild this current situation.
So is there a challenge for drainage and pedestrian pathways?
I think the pedestrian pathway is an absolutely valid one, and we did address that with the breaking up of 250 feet, because we think we analyzed a bunch of different cities and said, okay, what is the block length that we like before you have one of those path roofs? and we determined that 250 feet was the proper distance to have a downtown, that you still stay walkable, so the shops are right there, right after each other, and then you still have the opportunity to go through. After analyzing Greenville, Alden, yeah, 250 feet is not that big in the scheme of things. We found that that was the preferred thing. And like you said, people love outdoor seating, but usually in most situations, that is more appropriate in the front of the building. You know, if a building is, you know, say 100 feet deep, you know, we don't really want that whole area to be seating all the way back. Drainage in downtown is not, we usually capture it in piping. We do not have big grassy swales in a downtown commercial district normally. So we don't, you know, usually have a 15-foot, you know, area. And the whole idea of doing like a landscape buffer back there, that goes against, I forget what the term is, but that gets dangerous.
I think it's more challenging.
If you start having like a bunch of landscaping going all the way back there, it makes for areas where people cannot be seen. And in a downtown, that is not a preferred situation.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's in the movies, yeah, I get it.
Well, I mean, even
In the movies, we have never mind.
let's say, even in a not downtown, if you require this, that set, like you guys were saying, setback runs the total depth. So what you could wind up with is like on 93 or other commercial corridors, this setback is required. And now I do have a restaurant with outdoor seating, but it's 5 feet from the residential neighborhood backyard. You've got a commercial outdoor seating area now that backs up to your backyard because we were required to have that setback. So
I don't see what good it does.
Yeah.
I mean, there's already the 250 feet.
if somebody sees it financially beneficial to have outdoor dining and stuff, they're gonna put that in. Like if it's, you know, if it's in an area where there's foot traffic or people enjoy it and there's a financial incentive there, it's gonna go in whether it's required or not. And requiring that, I feel like just opens up, you're gonna lose out on some smaller stuff that could go in some places, and you're gonna possibly create problems for areas, like I said, where you are now opening that commercial building all the way back to a neighborhood or something that backs up to it. Because there's a lot of areas in town where there's not really a good transition zone between commercial and a residential spot, just from the way the town's developed.
Commissioner Faction, did you have another comment?
Just one more. So how long has that 250 foot been in place?
In place. I think I got that passed about 3 years ago, maybe?
Okay.
4 maybe? Yeah.
Since I was,
Yeah.
I'll be here 7 years.
And Tanya, I will say that to your point about the outdoor seating, we, more often than not, we're telling people they can't, people call for outdoors. Every business in town wants outdoor seating. It's, do they have room on the front of their building? And that's not something the planning commission is going to fix this evening. That's historical build patterns in our downtown that don't allow for it in a lot of places. But some of the newer places, though, like the ones we're referencing, definitely have space for it.
Yeah.
It's just some of the traditional Clemson downtown that you're thinking about. Yeah, you've got those few tables outside of Sully's, and Evolve, I think, has some now. But there's just, in terms of ADA requirements in the front of the building, like the alleyways aren't there like this is suggesting, but just in terms of, we have places call all the time that would like for it, and we don't have the fire or ADA space required to allow it. So everyone wants it.
We have to increase the front setback to create an area for that.
If something burned down and they had to rebuild it,
Correct.
there would be a setback.
So if they wanted to though, let's say right now, somebody comes in and buys a ballot place, tears it all down, and they wanted to create patio seating area and things like that within their commercial, they can do it.
Absolutely. They can do it.
And go ahead and do that on their own. For instance, we used to have patio seating, and what we found out is it would get used 2 months, and then it didn't get used again, and we had a worse traffic problem, so we had to make a decision. But it would only get used 2 months,
I think what we're saying
where we were.
is what you're saying is that this doesn't create outdoor seating. By making people stick to 15-foot setback, that's not creating outdoor seating. It's just limiting commercial, what people can build, which is, you know.
And it's creating
it's not creating
blank
outdoor
space.
seating.
It's creating a blank space,
Yeah.
outdoor space.
I mean, I think if there was a viable reason to require a setback between every parcel, it would need to be on a sliding scale so that you could still have a quarter-acre commercial lot, like, oh, it's gotta be 5%, you know, whatever the percentage works out to, we're like, all right, if you've got a quarter acre, you only need a 3-foot setback on, you know, each side or something like that, versus if you've got 2 acres, you gotta have 15 feet. But like, requiring on a small lot that you give up 30 feet is, just makes it undevelopable, really.
But again, they're saying in here, and I want to be fair about it, you just pointed out that said exceptions can be made for downtown Clemson and already established areas where there are no setbacks. But that goes contrary to what you're saying. It would, the other places on 93.
Yeah, anywhere else that
like
somebody might swallow up a small
else.
lot.
But it also goes back to time, who's the one deciding on the exception?
Right. Do you,
So I mean, like you said, if Hubbard and Young burnt down today and you had to have 15 feet on each side,
It doesn't happen.
they wouldn't even be able to get, nobody'd be able to drive in there.
Yeah, so my biggest fear of this is it forces people to sell and accumulate larger developments. And like what we keep talking about is we want to keep little guys, you know, smaller businesses in town. This is kind of forcing it back to where we're saying the bigger PDs. Only the big developers are going to be able to do it because they're going to buy up everything. But that's the fear. You can't see the future of what exactly will happen, but.
If there were drainage issues and things like that, for any future developments and things, that needs to be an issue.
That's part of site plan.
We actually already put it in the
site
ordinance.
plan.
Well, we don't really run into drainage issues per se, because usually these big developments, they are capturing the rain that falls on top of them and piping it straight in. What we have put in the ordinance, though, is that the fire marshal can demand a access point. So if that's the only time that so if we have a safety concern and we say we need to be able to get in there, we need something like that, we actually put in the ordinance that he can require it.
For instance, just backstory inside baseball, probably the first 2 months of the hub proposals when they were just proposing stuff with staff was them twisting and turning the parking garage in the back to be able to allow for a fire truck, and with our fire marshal and our public works, because the dumpster area is there too, so they would be hidden off street. So I don't think it shows up in the plans great unless I point it out to you, but there's essentially a roadway back there that's on the side of that allows for the fire truck and allows for the public works guys to pick up dumpsters.
Because in general, we do want the rest of what we're calling uptown to develop it. I guess this really comes down to is if the comp plan says that we want to make this a non-walkable area, like if you want it to be vehicular centric, these setbacks work, that's fine. But if you want it to be pedestrian, this would not be your ideal setbacks. So I guess that's kind of the thing. So like if we decide there's certain areas that we don't want that, the problem is like on the other commercial areas that are vehicular, we kept it at 0 to give people flexibility, so that creative site planning, and we just didn't see really a harm in it. But
and I think with the comprehensive plan, with the ability to come in and see the whole area at one time, that's the only way we get all the information. I think if there are ways that you need to control it now, it'd be through an overlay zone, an overlay district. But you got to be very careful with that, because the overlay district that I'm in did not accomplish what the overlay district was meant to be. We just spent a bunch of money.
So with our comprehensive plan, if the consultants feel like we have the wrong setbacks, and they're going to bring this up, right? Or no?
well, not in for a comprehensive plan. They might say general. A comprehensive plan would not get down to
Or the zoning,
that would be more
what
the
you're
zoning,
talking
yeah.
about.
Would say this area should be a walkable, vibrant area.
Yes.
That's more like what a comprehensive plan would say. And then we would then go to the next step of deciding what those setbacks would be. But this should be a vehicular, this should be an industrial area. I mean, obviously, an industrial area, we'd have big setbacks, I don't know if we can get industrial area.
What I'm saying is if it's wrong, someone is going to bring it up like
Yeah, I
a
mean-
consultant? Or
Yes.
our consultant right here?
Correct, and that's what I was gonna point out, like, this is a bad thing. We know there are certain things in our zoning code that are incorrect, and we, like the, thing that you guys took on this evening, was a fine that Jacob found. And as we find those, he has full permission to bring, stacks of papers, if that's in there. I think our zoning code it functions. It functions very well, actually. But I think there's some conflation in what the comprehensive plan does and what the zoning code does, certainly, around town. Comprehensive plan is very aspirational. It's a guiding document mainly for staff, and city council and planning commission. But certainly our current document, an average citizen is not gonna take it and flip through it. Our new one, we think they might. Then the zoning code is your nuts and bolts of setbacks and things like you're talking about. So they're definitely two different documents. So once you, I guess the best way to say this is your comp plan might give you some idea of the land use function and pattern that you want, and then the comp plan will really, then the zoning code will really flesh that out. So what we think may happen, we're not sure yet because we're still in the middle of the process, but our comp plan may be at odds with our current zoning code in some aspects. So then what you would do is study the whole zoning code or aspects of the zoning code to fix that and make those two documents work together.
Yes.
And that's what I was referring to about the company coming in after that to study the zoning code,
If
to
it's
get
approved,
all
yeah.
the information.
Yeah.
I'll ask one more question that just popped into my head, thinking of mentioning the hub and all that kind of stuff. Is there any way to get either you guys have it or get a legal opinion on whether putting these setbacks in would be any kind of issue as far as a taking or something like that?
We can get an opinion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just because after everything the last couple of months, it seems like that, I don't
It depends on exactly how you wrote it, because like the whole little part there, exceptions for downtown.
Yeah.
You'd have to really flesh out exactly what that means to get a legal opinion on that, because that makes a huge difference.
Because you can't grant exceptions to some people and then don't grant exceptions to others.
That's what I mean. It's
Are we just gonna, or are we saying we're not doing it for C, we're not doing it for CM, and so it.
But wouldn't you be grandfathered if you already own the land?
It specifically says in our zoning ordinance that you are, in commercial is not grandfathered. And if something happens, you're out of luck unless.
And you got to bring it up.
Yeah.
Because that's why we had to recommend rezoning
You remember when we did
other ones, because
Did something happen to our commercial?
when we changed the height in commercial, if you guys remember when we changed the height commercial, we listed all the buildings that could be rebuilt back to that height because we realized that could conceivably be a takings. So we had to address that at that time. So in our zoning ordinance, it is listed what buildings can be built back to that 65 feet.
Are there any other questions, comments, thoughts? Because this will be an action item next meeting.
No, I appreciate all the information that you gave us.
No problem.
I might have been sorry. I know I said last thing. And not to put anybody on the spot, but does staff have a recommendation that they would be willing to and or like to present on these suggestions? If not, that's fine. I'm just asking.
Staff's recommendation would be that they would like to hear what the planning commission thinks about these recommendations.
Well, I think there are a lot of comments tonight. I think there were a lot of concerns tonight with it. I think the big thing that what I heard, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, is on the 15-foot setback, it would be limiting, even though there are exceptions downtown. What I heard was we would like more walkable, which is 250 feet that's already addressed. If this was done, it wouldn't be walkable. If the 15-foot setback was done, that there are not that many cities or places that do 15-foot setbacks. What else I heard tonight was if there was a concern with fire and EMS, that would be brought up and be required in any of these areas, which I'm all for. I mean, that is 100%. I also heard that despite the 15 feet, we need more places and developers who are willing to do outside seating and outside gathering places in what they're doing. That's what I heard. So as far as the planned development part goes, what I heard was it may be too restrictive to do that. And there would be concerns of larger people coming in and bigger developers buying more and more land and affordable housing to go to that. I heard that there's a major concern of protecting neighborhoods, which I 100% agree. And so is there anything that I missed? Were those, is that everybody, what I heard?
I'm very interested probably in learning a little bit more about when Jacob is talking about there's certain buildings that are built to look a certain way regardless of their use. Because some of the aesthetics of new development in Clemson leaves a lot to be desired, because a lot of it doesn't even have to go before Board of Architectural Review.
So that would be, at the end of the day, if it was a planned development, would be the only place in the purview of this committee.
We can put something together.
Correct or not?
No, because
I'm just interested in learning about this.
the plan, oh, sorry, I should go. The planning commission should initiate all zoning ordinances. So although the BAR are the ones who implement the regulations, you guys absolutely have a role and a responsibility of initiating that ordinance that they're following. Because right now, the BAR is just following the ordinance that's in place. And they do, you know, we've been modifying it, and there's something, I think that, like, again, Bixby's is the only one that's been built under the modern one. There are very different codes for, you know, we'll say CM on College Ave compared to 123, like what things have to look like. But you guys absolutely, if the best thing you can do is you give me examples of what you like, and I can write code to reflect that. That is the best thing I can tell you, is that you give me specific examples, and I can absolutely make that happen.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done in the past, is we've kind of gone through what we like about things, and so we changed around, you know, how much has to be brick, how much has to be stone, how much it has to be glass, all that kind of thing for like the walkable areas. So like we have total control over that, and you guys are the ones who initiate that.
And for PDs, we implemented, we haven't had an application come through since we changed it, but we did put in where we have the option to now require an additional workshop with the BAR, because before it was completely bypassing it.
And I'd just like to point out, 412 College just got their final BAR approval last week. So even though that was approved by there was a PD approved by City Council, they said final finishes and colors and everything had to go back in front of BAR for final approval. So they'd gotten their massing and stuff like that, and they did, and almost very little change, but what they did bring to the table, I think, was very, very good. Basically, just little things like, you know, all the vents and the conduit and everything like that all had to be painted to match the, you know, the background color of what they're going on, so they don't stick out. But like, that is absolutely an option, yes. So even PDs can go in front of the BAR.
We have a really solid Board of Architectural Review. I mean, it's a good mix of citizens that. Yeah.
But
not everything goes before the BAR.
It can, and almost everything commercial does. Oh, everything commercial that's not a PD definitely does.
But if it's a PD, can't we recommend, or City Council has to recommend that it go before the BAR?
Yes.
Is that something that we
That's
could do?
new,
We can make a recommendation?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was, we've got, it's an option to bring them in now, but we could propose a change that all PDs in an AR district are still required to go through AR.
I believe that could be made a requirement.
I think we could absolutely, you guys make the recommendation. I think council, I'm not going to speak for them, but I'm sure they would love to hear that recommendation.
So I think for everyone that comes before us, we can decide at that point and make that recommendation.
Provided
that
these
that's gotta happen.
people are on planning commission.
That's right.
Yeah, that all
If we're
depends on
not
them.
here, the next group may not.
It was adopted that, on the workshop. that
Right, but that's
the commission has
optional.
It is
It's up to the commission.
Right.
But yes.
But if we wanted to make that more mandatory, we could change that from optional to just adding that step to where that's required in the PD process.
We can talk about that more, because, again, Clemson 1 would have been appropriate for that, like all the different buildings going from the BAR, maybe not, it's all residential, the park, but
Yeah, something to flesh out.
Okay. Any other discussion on this matter? Okay. Staff reports.
You know, I'll zip through kind of what I found out. I sent out the poll for the commission wanted to consider a standard workshop schedule. One of the problems is this room here is booked to the max. And so, in terms of through 4 weeks out of the month. And the best date for the commission, there were 2 good dates, and they were both taken up, it turns out. But one of them is on the 3rd Thursday, which is the BZA's meeting date. They don't meet very often. So that, I would think, is probably the best. To say a regular date would be the 3rd Thursday, since everybody that responded said that they could do it under normal conditions. And if we find out that there will be a BZA meeting actually taking place, then we could always find something that works best if we need it. Honestly, unless something changes, how many BZA meetings do you not roughly have you witnessed or?
I've been here, a year and a half. We probably had 3.
Yeah.
They got one coming up.
Yeah.
They got one coming up. That's it.
We had one the other day, and that was strange because
I watched that. I was like, you guys mentioned it never been. I was like, I just watched one of those the other day, like a couple days ago.
Well, then maybe that was one of them.
Before that, it had probably been 6 or 7 months before we had one.
Well, I tell you, I've been here 7 years, and other than that, 3 or whatever, I can remember a couple of others. So it's not like, now, again, you change a rule or something happens and you can always get a variance appeal. You never know. They can always be. But the trend has been that even though this room was reserved on the 3rd Thursday of every month, it was hardly ever used. So
How long do their meetings normally last, even if they were going to have a meeting?
they are very structured, and it's about presenting evidence and all. I've known,
The whole night, yeah.
It could go long, but I would think in most cases, you're probably still talking about an hour and a half, but you don't know that until, so it's one of those cases that if there was a conflict with a scheduled meeting, we just say, okay, you can't take a chance of just waiting around until they're done. But we could do something else. But I think, given the fact that all the other Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays certainly checked some Wednesday, it's just.
And workshops have to be in this room.
Depending on what it is, because this is the only one where you have the cameras and it can be live streamed. And if it's any significant issue, certainly you would want it here. We just don't have the capability in any other space.
We don't really have a requirement that things have to be videoed, but it's a nice service to the community.
It really is. If it was some little housekeeping thing where it really doesn't matter, and we've done that, you still have to go through the advertising process and all of that, so that it's out. It's just that if you think there's going to be more than 6 or 7, 8, 10 people wanting to come in and sit and watch it, that fills up a conference room. We've got a couple of those available most of the time. we can make something happen for those. It's when you may have 15, 20 people, this is really your only space.
Didn't we have,
I feel like I had one in a conference room once,
There
but
was one in the conference room, but I feel like when they were doing the renovations on here, they were down at the other
We
end.
had to, yes, because they had the
In the
HVAC
court or
going out.
something? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So I mean, it's possible, it's legal. It's
But no,
legal.
yeah, because they just didn't have the
You just
videos.
can't live stream.
Okay.
Sounds like we need to build another room.
yeah, y'all need a second live stream.
You're telling me?
Yeah, we're out of space.
Is there any other staff?
That's all I have.
I'll just say comp plan, if you haven't looked at the existing conditions memo, please do. And that's, they are going to start winding down the survey results. We are going to do a push, again, like a final push, let's get as much in. I talked with Robert and Andy. I think we're probably going to do the hangers on the trash cans. That way everyone has, at least put the QR code there in their website so everyone can go there. And then really like the next piece of the comp plan, like existing conditions just is what is, and it's not necessarily part of the document. It might be an appendix someday, but now going forward, it's really like our future land use map and the fun stuff. I mean, I don't remember who I was talking about it with, maybe Jacob, but like even the stuff you all have talked about tonight is the stuff we nerd out on all the time. So like it's an awesome time to be a planner in Clemson because there's so much going on and stuff that really you guys are important because you're really making decisions that impact 50 years, and that's exactly what the comp plan does. So that's important. Get on that and tell your friends. And I think that's
We know how the participation's been so far.
hasn't been great. And we have, I mean, I'll just be honest, it hasn't been great. I've been a little saddened by that, especially with everything going on. I think that I expected more. We have exhausted our social media, our email blasts. We're doing all the normal things that we do with everything else.
Y'all have done a really good job with social media lately. I feel like it's really been.
Yeah, we have. I'll pass that along. But yeah, the participation has been great. We had a lot of things going on. We had the Parks Master Plan going on. We had so some of that could have gotten conflated with what's what. But you know, we're pressing on despite that.
How many of those take-home kits have you issued out? Has anyone taken you up on that?
Yeah, people have taken me up on that. And some clubs, actually now that you say that, I haven't gotten a stack of them back from someone that I'll check up on. So yeah, that's done well. But I think the thing that I'm learning from the comp plan is like, yes, this is the big push for it, but just like we did tonight, and not to pick on you, Tiny, but to hear you say like, hey, I like learning about this stuff. Like, we want to get better in social media and everything of like, you know, I don't know, this is what a setback is, and this is why it matters to you, that type of stuff.
Right.
I'm trying to do, I don't know, I haven't talked to you individually, but I recently took over parking downtown, and so there's some things that I want to be doing about that, like.
You took over parking downtown, is that what you said?
Yes, in our department, we took over parking. And so, but then, you know, my department is planning, engineering, building, parking now. So what I'm trying to do, I have a large sheet of paper in my office, and I'm not a marketing social media guy at all, but like, what are some of these things we can push out of like, these are, you know, what I'm just goofy stuff like that, planning stuff, but this is why you need to mow your grass, and you know, those type of things, just as like FYI type things to blast out, to be better at that. But I don't know what that has to do with the comp plan, but I think
information is good.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really good.
and that's what it is. I think the more we can get out there about what we're doing here, because I do think at some point, especially now with parking, at some point every citizen in the city of Clemson is going to interact with Kelly or Becca in our department at the front desk, because whether if you're doing any sort of development or you just moved here, you're going to interact with us somehow, and We'd like to be able to put as much, as much before you get there as humanly possible.
Okay, any other items, planning commission at council meeting, future workshops, any other events? Okay, we're at the point. It's time to adjourn. Anybody make a motion, we adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Adjourn.
And I think Elaine and I took a workshop on Robert's rules, and I think we established a lady that's a pretty big expert over at Pendleton, that the chair